You know that moment when you're folding laundry or standing in the shower and someone who hurt you years ago suddenly pops into your mind? And just like that, your chest gets heavy, your jaw tenses, and you're right back in that old conversation, trying to fix it, explain it, or finally say what you never could. You don't talk enough about what it means to carry pain that doesn't have closure, what it means to live with relationships that ended not with resolution, but with silence or a slammed door. And here's the hardest part. Sometimes reconciliation is not possible. Not because you didn't try, but because they won't, or because it's not safe, or because the version of peace they're offering demands that you betray yourself. So what do we do with that? What do we do with the weight of unreconciled relationships we keep dragging behind us like emotional carry-ons? Making peace doesn't mean saying what happened was okay. It means saying you no longer want it to control you. I want to sit with that for a second because it's one of the hardest truths to really get deep down. For a long time, I thought making peace with someone I could never reconcile with meant I had to let them off the hook, that it meant I was saying, you know what, it wasn't that bad, or worse, I'm over it. But that's not what peace is. Peace isn't soft. It's not weak. Peace is incredibly strong because real peace, true, internal, grounded peace, asks you to do something brutal. To accept what happened, not approve of it, not agree with it. Accept that it happened, that it changed you, and that you're not going to wait for someone else to fix it before you decide to heal. That's hard, especially when we've been hurt deeply. Our nervous systems are wired to seek closure. Our brains are storytelling machines. They want to find the ending. They want to make sense of the pain, to tie it up, to hear someone say, I was wrong and I'm sorry. But if that day never comes, are we supposed to just stay angry forever? I used to think the answer was yes, that holding on to the pain was a form of justice, that if I stayed hurt, it proved how wrong they were. But here's what the research says and what I've lived. Staying hurt doesn't protect you. It doesn't restore what was lost. It just keeps your life small. You shrink to fit the shape of the wound. There's a term in trauma recovery called integration. It's different from resolution. Resolution is when everything is solved, forgiven, smoothed out. Integration is something else entirely. It's when you take what happened and you let it become part of your story, but not the whole story. It means the pain gets a seat at the table, but it doesn't get to run the meeting. That's peace. It's saying, I'm not denying what happened. I'm not excusing it, but I am choosing not to carry the weight of it every day. And maybe that feels unfair. It did to me for a long time, because if I let go of the anger, if I stop replaying the fight in my head, then who's holding them accountable? But here's the uncomfortable truth. They're probably not thinking about it. You are. You're the one losing sleep. You're the one reliving it. Making peace isn't about them. It's about you reclaiming your mind, your body, your energy. Peace doesn't say, you were right. Peace says, I'm done letting this pain steal any more of my life. That's not permission, that's power. I didn't believe that at first. Honestly, I used to think boundaries were cold. I thought setting them meant shutting people out or building walls to keep others at a distance. But what I learned, both through research and in my own messy, imperfect life, is that boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping you grounded in who you are. When you're dealing with someone who can't reconcile with, maybe someone who continues to deny the hurt they caused or who refuses to take any responsibility, it's easy to get stuck in this loop where you feel like you should keep the door open. Maybe out of guilt, maybe because you've been taught that cutting people off makes you cold or unforgiving, or maybe deep down, you're still hoping one day they'll wake up and finally say, the thing you've been needing to hear. And listen, I get that. There are people in my life I waited years to hear from. I kept the line open. I kept showing up. And it wasn't always brave. It was sometimes about fear. Fear of being seen as harsh. Fear of being called selfish. Fear of being misunderstood. But what I've learned is that when you keep showing up in relationships where your boundaries are constantly being pushed, or worse, ignored, you start to disappear. Not all at once, not dramatically, just little by little. You get quieter. You stop asking for what you need. You second guess your instincts. You shrink. And here's the thing, you can't be compassionate toward others if you're constantly abandoning yourself. You can't show up from a place of love and strength if you are constantly depleted, resentful, or wounded. Boundaries are the way we stay in integrity with ourselves. They're how we say, I can care about you and I can care about me. They're how we stop confusing kindness with self-sacrifice. I remember a conversation I had once with someone who had hurt me deeply. They wanted to reconnect, but not in a way that felt safe, not with accountability, not with real change, just the kind of surface level reconnection that would have required me to pretend the past didn't happen. And I felt this pull, maybe I should just do it. Maybe it's the loving thing to do. But my body said otherwise. My gut felt tight, my voice got small, and I realized something important. My peace can't come at the price of my truth. I can still wish them well, I can still hope they heal, but I can do that from over here. There's this belief floating around that boundaries are about punishment, that if you draw a line, you're being spiteful or dramatic. But real boundaries aren't about hurting someone else. They're about honoring what you need to be emotionally well. They're about being clear. This is what I can give. This is what I can't. This is what I need to feel safe, to feel whole, to stay rooted in love and not resentment. And here's the unexpected twist. The clearer you get with your boundaries, the more compassion you'll have. Because you're no longer performing peace while secretly drowning in pain. And honestly, there is no equal advantage. You're not being cruel when you protect your peace. You're being honest, you're being brave, and you're giving yourself the space to heal without reopening the wound every time someone wants to pretend it never happened. When reconciliation isn't possible, you don't just grieve the relationship. Yes. You grieve the fantasy of what it could have been. This is something we don't talk about enough. We understand grief when someone passes away. We send flowers, we make casseroles, we give each other space to cry and fall apart. But what about the kind of grief that doesn't come with a funeral? What about the grief that lives in the silence after a friendship ends, or a parent walks away, or a sibling becomes a stranger? That's called ambiguous grief. And it's real, it's exhausting, it's invisible. And sometimes it hurts just as much, if not more, than the grief we can name and point to. I've sat across from so many people in my research and in my life who are struggling with unreconciled relationships, and almost every time, underneath the anger, the numbness, the confusion, there was grief. And not just for what happened, but for what never happened, for the conversations that never came, the apologies that were never offered, the healing that never got the chance to begin. And here's what's tricky. Because that grief doesn't fit our usual boxes, we often shame ourselves for feeling it. We think, why am I still sad about this? It's been years, or they never showed up for me. Why do I still care? But caring is not weakness. Longing is not foolishness. It's the evidence of our humanity. When you love someone, or even just hoped to, you build expectations, dreams, a future. And when that's taken from you, you have to grieve it. We think grief is reserved for the moments when something is over, but sometimes we grieve things that never even really started. A mother who was never emotionally available. a best friend who ghosted, a partner who never saw you clearly. And when we're trying to make peace without reconciliation, we're not just letting go of a person. We're letting go of an idea, an image, a possibility, and that's no small thing. I used to believe that moving on meant getting over it, that grief was a process with a finish line, 5 steps, and then you're done. But grief doesn't work like that. It loops. It surprises you. It shows up in a random song or a birthday you forgot you remembered. It's not linear. It's not neat. It's just human. What helps is naming it, saying, this is grief, even if no one else sees it. Even if the person who hurt you doesn't acknowledge it. When you name the grief, you stop gaslighting yourself. You stop pushing it down with shame and pretending you're fine, and you start making space for healing. I'll be honest, grieving someone who's still alive can be one of the loneliest kinds of pain, because you see them maybe on social media, maybe across town, maybe even in your own family, and they're living their life like none of it happened. And it can feel like the grief is only yours to carry. But grief, when we allow it to be seen and felt, has a way of softening us, not weakening us, but softening us in a way that lets truth in, that makes space for peace, even in the absence of reconciliation. You don't have to wait for closure to start grieving. You don't need permission to mourn what never became. Grief is not a mistake. It's the price of having the kind of heart that was open enough to love, to hope, to imagine something more. One of the most painful truths I've ever had to accept is this: some people will never see it from your side. They may never say, I hurt you. They may never admit what happened. And not because it didn't happen, not because you imagined it, but because they can't or won't own their part in the story. And that is excruciating when you've spent so much time trying to be understood. I think one of the most vulnerable things we do as humans is share our pain with someone who caused it, hoping they'll meet us with empathy. We're wired for connection. And when that connection is broken, our first instinct is often to fix it, to explain, to prove, to spell out every detail until the other person finally gets it. And sometimes, if we're honest, we think that understanding equals healing, that if they could just see it the way we see it, then maybe we could finally move on. But what happens when they don't? What happens when they say, that's not how I remember it, or you're being too sensitive, or worse, they pretend nothing ever happened at all? Here's what I've learned, both in the data and in my own heartbreak. Waiting for someone else to validate your pain is like handing them the keys to your emotional life. You're saying, I can't move forward until you tell me I'm allowed to feel what I feel. And that's a dangerous place to live, because it puts your healing in the hands of someone who may never be capable or willing to offer it. I've had to learn how to affirm my own experience, to say, this happened, it mattered, it changed me, and I don't need anyone else to co-sign that truth for it to be real. That doesn't mean we close off our hearts. It doesn't mean we become rigid or self-righteous. It means we stop begging for something that may never come. Not out of anger, but out of self-respect. It means we stop treating our healing like it's contingent on someone else's emotional maturity. And that is hard, because so much of us longs for resolution, longs for that moment where the other person says, you were right, I see it now. But if that moment never comes, you are still allowed to heal. You are still allowed to find peace. You are still allowed to move on. There's this quiet courage in saying, my story is valid even if you never understand it. That kind of strength comes from the inside. It's not loud, not performative, but it's powerful. And it changes everything. You can honor your pain without holding on to it. You can acknowledge what happened without needing to rehash it with someone who refuses to listen. You can name your experience without waiting for anyone else to agree. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do is stop explaining. Not because the story doesn't matter, because you finally believe yourself. Forgiveness is one of those words that tends to make people tense up. I get it. It used to land heavy for me too, because somewhere along the way, forgiveness got tangled up with the idea of forgetting, of erasing what happened, of pretending we're fine when we're not. But real forgiveness, genuine, grounded, hard-earned forgiveness, has nothing to do with erasing the past. It has everything to do with reclaiming your future. Let's be clear, forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was okay. It doesn't mean you're suddenly ready to have lunch with the person who betrayed you. And it certainly doesn't mean reconciliation is even on the table. Forgiveness and reconciliation are two very different things. One is about you, the other is about us. And sometimes us is no longer possible or safe. In my work and in my own experience, I've come to understand forgiveness as a decision to stop carrying the weight of someone else's choices. Because that weight, it's heavy. It shows up in your body, in your relationships, in the way you protect yourself from people who haven't even hurt you yet. And here's where it gets really tricky. Sometimes the pain feels like the only thing tying you to the truth of what happened. Like if you let go of the resentment, you're letting go of the story. But that's not how it works. Letting go of pain doesn't mean you're denying the truth. It means you're finally trusting it enough to stop clutching it so tightly. I've read so many definitions of forgiveness over the years, but one that continues to resonate is this. Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different. Sit with that for a moment. Because that's the part that trips most of us up. We want to change it. We want to rewrite it. We want a different ending. And forgiveness asks us to grieve the ending we got and begin again with all of our scars and wisdom and clarity intact. Now, does that happen overnight? No, forgiveness is not an event. It's a practice. Sometimes it's daily, sometimes it's every hour, and sometimes you think you've done it, and then that person's name shows up on your phone or in a conversation, and your chest tightens all over again. That doesn't mean you failed. It just means you're human. Forgiveness is more like a muscle than a switch. You build it over time, with intention, with boundaries, with support. You don't have to feel ready. You just have to feel done with the suffering. When I forgave someone I knew I would never reconcile with, it didn't come with a big epiphany. It came with a quiet moment where I realized, I don't want this pain to be the loudest voice in the room anymore. I wanted to feel peace more than I wanted to be right. I wanted to be free. And that's what forgiveness is. It's saying I choose to stop reliving what hurt me, not because it didn't matter, but because I do. So here we are. We've talked about peace, not the tidy Instagram quote kind of peace, but the gritty, soul-deep, earned kind. The kind of peace that comes when you stop waiting for someone else to fix what they broke. The kind that says, I'm allowed to heal even if you never say you're sorry. We've talked about boundaries as sacred, grief as holy, validation as something you don't need permission for, and forgiveness not as forgetting, but as freedom. Let me tell you this clearly. Making peace with people you'll never reconcile with is not a betrayal of your story. It's a declaration that your story deserves to keep going. You are not weak for letting go. You are not bitter for holding boundaries. You are not dramatic for grieving something others don't understand. You are a whole human being doing the hard, quiet work of healing, and that work matters. There will be days when the past still stings. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you're still living with your heart open. And there is no courage more powerful than that. You are allowed to choose peace. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to walk away from what will never change and still wish people well from a distance. And if no one has told you this yet, I'm proud of you for doing the work, for standing in your truth, for choosing healing even when it's lonely. Good luck out there. You're doing braver things than you know.